In the sweltering heat of July 1518, Strasbourg, a city nestled within the Holy Roman Empire, stood at a crossroads between medieval traditions and the early whispers of the Renaissance. Its cobblestone streets were alive with the chatter of merchants and townsfolk, each preoccupied with the daily grind of survival. It was a time of uncertainty. Plagues swept through Europe with ruthless regularity, famine loomed, and the people's faith in divine intervention was their only constant. Yet even amid these struggles, something entirely unthinkable was about to grip the city, casting it into a state of hysteria that would baffle historians for centuries. It began quietly, almost unremarkably, with a woman named Frau Trophia. On an ordinary morning, she stepped into the sunlit streets near her modest home and began to dance. But this was no ordinary display of joy or celebration. Her movements were jerky, almost violent, and completely uncoordinated, as though her body were rebelling against her will. Those who paused to watch assumed she was either drunk or had gone mad. After all, in a time when illnesses were as mysterious as the stars, strange behavior was often dismissed with a shrug or a nervous laugh. But Frau Trophia's dance didn't stop. For hours, she twirled, stomped, and flailed, her face a mixture of anguish and determination. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some curious, others unnerved. As dusk fell and Frau Trophia continued to dance without pause, her audience swelled. Whispers turned to murmurs of concern. Was she bewitched? Was this a sign from God? By the second day, the spectacle drew even more onlookers. Frau Trophia's feet were blistered and bleeding, her face gaunt from exhaustion, but she still could not stop. Her neighbors tried to help her, attempting to lead her home or hold her still, but her body seemed possessed, her limbs jerking free of their grip. Word spread quickly through the city. What started as an isolated oddity became the talk of Strasbourg. Then, something even stranger happened. By the third day, others began to join her. One by one, men and women across the city felt an irresistible compulsion to dance. First, they were scattered, isolated incidents in different neighborhoods. But soon, they converged. In the town square, hundreds of people began to move in unison, their bodies writhing and twisting to an invisible rhythm. There was no music, no festival to explain the phenomenon, just the sound of feet pounding against stone and the occasional cries of pain. As their bodies gave out, the mood shifted from curiosity to terror. Families tried to lock their loved ones indoors, but many escaped, pulled irresistibly to join the others. The dancing was relentless and for some, deadly. Exhaustion claimed the weakest first. People who danced until their hearts gave out or collapsed from dehydration under the scorching summer sun. The city's leaders were at a loss. Strasbourg had faced its share of hardships before: plague outbreaks, floods, and famine, but nothing like this. The archbishop declared the event a punishment from God for the city's sins, urging the people to repent. Religious processions were held, but the dancing only grew. In desperation, local physicians were consulted. At the time, medical knowledge was a patchwork of ancient Greek philosophy and medieval superstition. The physicians diagnosed the afflicted with hot blood, a condition they believed arose when the body's humors became unbalanced. Their solution? Let the dancers exhaust themselves. Following the doctor's advice, city officials erected a stage in the town square and hired musicians to accompany the dancers. If dancing was their compulsion, the authorities reasoned it might also be their cure. The streets of Strasbourg were transformed into a nightmarish carnival, with musicians playing day and night as the dancers writhed and convulsed to their rhythms. The logic was simple. The afflicted would dance themselves into submission and find relief through sheer exhaustion. But the plan backfired spectacularly. The music only seemed to intensify the mania. What had started with a handful of people now encompassed hundreds. The town square, once a bustling center of trade and conversation, became a sea of flailing limbs, bloodied feet, and anguished cries. The stench of sweat and despair hung heavy in the air. As the days stretched into weeks, the city was paralyzed. Markets were abandoned, crops went untended, and fear spread faster than the dancing itself. Families lived in dread, wondering if their loved ones might be next. Superstition mingled with desperation, and rumors began to circulate. Some whispered that the devil himself had cursed Strasbourg, luring its people into his infernal dance. Others pointed to Saint Vitus, a patron saint known for his association with dancing and epilepsy. Perhaps this was his vengeance? Whatever the cause, the reality was undeniable. People were dying. The toll of the dance plague was mounting, and the city teetered on the brink of chaos. The authorities' efforts to contain the phenomenon had failed, leaving Strasbourg's leaders grappling with a chilling question. If neither faith nor medicine could stop the dancing, what could? What force could drive hundreds of people into such a deadly, uncontrollable frenzy? Was it truly a curse, or something more insidious lurking within the city's walls? The streets of Strasbourg had transformed into a living nightmare. What began with one woman, Frau Trophia, had spiraled into a full-blown crisis. The townsfolk, already reeling from the hardships of their time, now faced a calamity they could neither understand nor control. The more they tried to solve the problem, the worse it seemed to grow. By midsummer of 1518, the dance plague had ensnared hundreds, and its grip on the city showed no sign of loosening. The city's leaders were desperate. By now, the spectacle had overwhelmed the town square and spilled into adjacent streets. Witnesses described an almost surreal scene, a sea of bodies jerking and twisting in wild, frenetic movements, their faces etched with pain and exhaustion. The air was thick with the sound of shuffling feet, anguished cries, and the occasional thud as another dancer collapsed. It was as though an invisible force had taken over the city, and no one was immune. For those who had loved ones caught in the mania, the toll was unbearable. Families tried in vain to restrain their afflicted kin, tying them to beds or barricading them indoors, but the compulsion to dance was unyielding. Some victims broke free, returning to the square to continue their frantic movements, while others succumbed to their injuries or sheer exhaustion in their homes. Meanwhile, the city's economy ground to a halt. Merchants closed their stalls, farmers abandoned their fields, and artisans left their tools untouched. The streets, once bustling with trade and conversation, now felt like the stage of a grim play. Travelers passing through Strasbourg recoiled at the sight, spreading tales of the dancing curse far and wide. In a city governed by faith as much as law, it was only natural that the church would step in. Priests held mass after mass, pleading with their congregations to repent for the sins that must surely have provoked such divine wrath. Processions wound through the streets, carrying relics and chanting prayers to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers and those afflicted by epilepsy. Many believed the plague to be his doing, a curse cast upon the city for failing to honor him properly. But even the church's intervention yielded no relief. In fact, the procession seemed to amplify the panic as more citizens succumbed to the dancing. Superstition spread like wildfire, feeding the frenzy. Some believed the afflicted had been bewitched by an evil spell, while others whispered of a poisonous vapor rising from the Rhine River. A few even claimed that the dancers had been possessed by demons, their bodies stolen by dark forces bent on, sowing chaos. Amid this spiritual panic, the city's secular leaders tried a different approach. Physicians, the closest thing to scientists in the 16th century, were called upon to explain the phenomenon. Their diagnosis? An overabundance of hot blood. According to the humoral theory that dominated medicine at the time, the human body was governed by four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. An imbalance of these fluids could cause illness, and in this case, the doctors believed that the dancers' blood had overheated, driving them to madness. The prescription was both bizarre and tragic. City officials, following the advice of the physicians, ordered the dancers to be given more opportunities to exhaust themselves. Stages were built, and musicians were hired to play around the clock. The logic was simple. If dancing had caused the affliction, then dancing might also cure it. But instead of alleviating the crisis, this solution turned the city into a macabre carnival. The hired musicians played frantically, trying to match the dancers' manic energy. Crowds gathered to watch, their expressions shifting from morbid curiosity to abject horror as they witnessed the toll it took on the dancers. Bloodied feet left streaks on the cobblestones, and the air grew heavy with the stench of sweat and suffering. For the dancers themselves, the spectacle was a descent into hell. Many were so consumed by the compulsion to move that they lost all awareness of their surroundings. They danced until their legs gave out, then crawled or convulsed on the ground before rising to continue. When they finally collapsed, too weak to move, they were often left where they fell. Some regained consciousness only to rejoin the fray, while others succumbed to strokes, heart attacks, or sheer exhaustion. By the third week, the death toll began to climb. Eyewitness accounts described corpses being carried away on carts, their faces frozen in expressions of terror and agony. It was no longer possible to deny the severity of the crisis. The dance plague had claimed dozens of lives, and the city was still no closer to understanding its cause or its cure. In the absence of answers, fear and paranoia began to fester. Who was to blame for the catastrophe? Fingers were pointed in every direction. Some accused the city's wealthier citizens of hoarding resources and angering the gods. Others blamed foreigners, accusing them of bringing a curse upon Strasbourg. A few even turned against the church, claiming that its failure to protect the city was proof of its corruption. The chaos was contagious. Even those who had not succumbed to the dancing felt its shadow looming over them. Every stumble, every involuntary twitch was enough to spark panic. People avoided public spaces, fearful that proximity to the dancers might infect them. With the same compulsion, Strasbourg's leaders were at their wits' end. They had exhausted every remedy available to them: prayer, music, medicine. Yet the plague persisted. The city teetered on the brink of collapse, its people desperate for relief but paralyzed by fear. Amid this despair, a new question emerged. Was the dance plague truly a curse from the divine? Or could there be something more sinister at work, something hidden within the city itself? Could the source of this deadly dancing be something the people of Strasbourg couldn't see, or perhaps didn't want to see? What hidden forces could drive an entire city to the brink of madness? The dance plague of 1518 had thrust Strasbourg into chaos. The streets, once alive with commerce, were now filled with the relentless rhythm of feet pounding cobblestones. Theories abounded, yet the truth remained as elusive as the cause of the deadly dance itself. As the city's leaders, physicians, and clergy scrambled for answers, speculation ranged from the plausible to the fantastical, each explanation reflecting the mindset of a society teetering between superstition and a nascent scientific curiosity. The first and most widely accepted theory was that the dance plague was divine retribution. Saint Vitus, a revered figure in Catholic tradition, was believed to be the patron saint of dancers, epileptics, and those afflicted by nervous disorders. According to legend, failing to honor Saint Vitus properly could provoke his wrath, manifesting as uncontrollable dancing. This belief was not without precedent. Across medieval Europe, dancing manias had been recorded sporadically for centuries. In many cases, these episodes were attributed to Saint Vitus' curse, a warning to sinners that repentance was required. Religious leaders in Strasbourg seized upon this explanation, urging the townsfolk to purify themselves through prayer and acts of devotion. The city organized processions, adorned the streets with relics of the saint, and conducted elaborate rituals to appease him. Yet, as the dancers continued to collapse and die, the church's efforts seemed futile. Rather than providing comfort, the invocation of Saint Vitus amplified the fear. reinforcing the idea that Strasbourg was under a divine curse. Ergot poisoning, the devil in the bread. In the centuries that followed, as scientific inquiry began to replace superstition, another theory emerged. The dancers were victims of ergot poisoning. Ergot, a fungus that grows on rye and other grains, can produce hallucinogenic compounds when consumed. In a city like Strasbourg, where bread was a staple, an outbreak of ergot in the local grain supply could have disastrous consequences. Ergotism, also known as St. Anthony's fire, was well documented in medieval Europe. It caused a range of symptoms, from convulsions and hallucinations to gangrene and death. The uncontrollable movements of the afflicted dancers bore a striking resemblance to the convulsive fits observed in ergotism victims. This theory suggested a chillingly mundane cause for the epidemic: contaminated bread. Yet, ergot poisoning alone could not explain the social contagion. The way the dancing spread from one person to another like wildfire. If ergot was to blame, why did some people succumb while others did not? And why did the phenomenon take on such a communal, almost ritualistic form? Mass hysteria, the power of the mind. Another explanation, rooted in psychology, proposed that the dance plague was an example of mass hysteria, or mass psychogenic illness. This phenomenon occurs when groups of people, under extreme psychological stress, experience shared physical or emotional symptoms. In 1518, the people of Strasbourg were no strangers to stress. Famine had ravaged the region. The Black Death still lingered in collective memory, and the social fabric was frayed by economic inequality and political uncertainty. Under such conditions, the human mind can become a powerful and dangerous force. Mass hysteria is often triggered by a single individual, whose behavior is amplified by collective anxiety. Frau Troffia's dancing may have acted as a spark, igniting a psychological wildfire. As others joined her, the spectacle fed upon itself, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of fear and imitation. This theory resonated with later scholars, who noted similar incidents throughout history. Outbreaks of fainting, laughing, or even trembling, often confined to closed communities. The dance plague of 1518, they argued, was not a curse or a disease, but a reflection of the human psyche pushed to its breaking point. Cultural rituals misinterpreted. A less sinister theory posited that the dance plague was not an affliction at all, but rather a misunderstood cultural ritual. During the medieval period, dancing was sometimes used as an expression of communal grief or spiritual devotion. In the wake of famine and hardship, the people of Strasbourg might have turned to dance as a form of catharsis. What began as a symbolic act could have spiraled out of control, with participants succumbing to exhaustion and bystanders interpreting the spectacle as a supernatural event. The church's involvement, coupled with the city's decision to hire musicians, might have further entrenched this perception, transforming an act of collective mourning into a deadly spectacle. The possession hypothesis. Finally, there were those who believed the dancers were victims of demonic possession. This theory, steeped in medieval superstition, suggested that the afflicted were not acting of their own volition, but were puppets controlled by malevolent forces. Their jerking, unnatural movements and anguished expressions seemed to confirm this suspicion. In an age when the line between the spiritual and the physical was blurred, possession offered a compelling explanation. It also justified the church's efforts to exorcise the demons through prayer and ritual. Yet, despite these efforts, the epidemic persisted, defying even the most determined clerics. A confluence of forces. Modern scholars suggest that the dance plague was likely the result of multiple factors, converging at once. Ergot poisoning might have primed the body, while mass hysteria amplified the mind's response. Cultural rituals and religious fervor provided a framework for the behavior, and the social context of famine and despair acted as a catalyst. Strasbourg in 1518 was a powder keg, and the dance plague was the spark. What remains extraordinary is not just the event itself, but the way it illuminated the intersection of human psychology, culture, and environment. The dancers were, in a sense, mirrors of their time, victims of forces far larger than themselves. Could the dance plague happen again? The unsettling combination of stress, superstition, and societal pressure may not be confined to the past. The human toll and the city's breaking point. As the dance plague of 1518 tightened its grip on Strasbourg, the true scope of its devastation began to emerge. What initially seemed like an unusual but isolated event had become an epidemic, leaving the city's people emotionally shattered, physically battered, and spiritually adrift. The toll was not just measured in the lives lost, but also in the psychological and societal wounds that would linger long after the last dancer collapsed. The physical toll. The dancers themselves bore the brunt of the catastrophe. Eyewitness accounts painted a grim picture of their suffering. Feet bruised and bloodied from days of ceaseless motion, bodies bent unnaturally as muscles seized from overexertion. Some dancers, unable to endure the relentless strain, collapsed from heat stroke under the summer sun. Others suffered fatal heart attacks, their bodies giving out under the immense physical stress. Death became a common sight in the town square. By midsummer, carts carried away the lifeless forms of those who had danced to their last breath. The city's undertakers struggled to keep up with the demand for burials, and the constant presence of death cast a shadow over the entire city. For the dancers who survived, the ordeal left lasting scars. Many were permanently crippled, their joints and muscles irreparably damaged. Others were haunted by nightmarish memories of the event, unable to explain why they had danced or how they had survived. The emotional and psychological cost. For the families of the afflicted, the plague was a source of profound grief and helplessness. Watching a loved one fall victim to the dancing mania was like witnessing a slow, agonizing possession. Parents, siblings, and spouses tried everything to stop the madness, restraining the dancers, pleading with them, or praying for divine intervention. But nothing worked. The sight of their loved ones suffering led many to despair. Some families withdrew from public life entirely, fearing the plague might spread to them. Others turned to extreme measures, seeking out local healers or performing desperate rituals to break the supposed curse. A few even succumbed to paranoia, accusing neighbors of witchcraft or spreading the affliction intentionally. For the broader community, the dance plague created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. People avoided public spaces, and a pervasive sense of doom settled over the city. Every twitch or involuntary movement became a cause for alarm, as even the healthy began to fear they might be the next to succumb. The city's infrastructure crumbles. The dance plague disrupted every aspect of daily life in Strasbourg. Markets, once vibrant, with the chatter of merchants and buyers, were eerily quiet. Farmers left their fields untended, fearing the plague or succumbing to the dancing themselves. Bakers, blacksmiths, and other tradespeople abandoned their posts as the city's economy ground to a halt. City officials struggled to maintain order. The musicians they had hired to dance out the afflicted had long since grown exhausted themselves, and the public funds used to pay them were rapidly depleting. The city treasury, already strained by famine and poor harvests, faced ruin as officials diverted resources to deal with the crisis. The strain extended to the city's clergy and medical professionals. Priests, overwhelmed by the demand for exorcisms and blessings, began to fall ill themselves, while physicians found their humoral remedies useless against the epidemic. Public faith in these institutions began to waver. If neither the church nor the doctors could provide answers, where could the people turn? Fear turns to blame. As the crisis deepened, the people of Strasbourg sought someone or something to blame. Rumors spread like wildfire, each more unsettling than the last. Some claimed the dancing was the work of witches who had cursed the city to bring it to its knees. Others whispered of demonic possession or a vengeful saint punishing the city for its sins. The tension spilled into public accusations. Neighbors turned on one another, accusing rivals of invoking dark magic. Foreigners and outsiders were singled out as potential culprits, fueling xenophobia and paranoia. The city became a tinderbox, its people on edge and ready to lash out at the slightest provocation. Attempts to reclaim control. Desperate to restore order, the city's leaders made one final attempt to curb the plague. Abandoning the earlier approach of encouraging dancing, they turned to isolation and quarantine. The afflicted were forcibly removed from the streets and confined to the outskirts of the city, far from the prying eyes of the public. Religious leaders, now adopting a more somber tone, declared the need for atonement. Public processions gave way to private acts of repentance, and relics of Saint Vitus were paraded through the city in hushed ceremonies. Slowly, the frenzy began to subside. Whether due to these measures or simply the passage of time, the dancing mania began to wane by late summer. Yet, even as the dancers disappeared, the scars they left behind were unmistakable. The city had been brought to its knees by a phenomenon it could neither predict nor explain. For the survivors, the dance plague was a reminder of how fragile human society could be, how easily the familiar rhythms of life could be disrupted by forces beyond comprehension. The aftermath. When the final dancer collapsed, Strasbourg was left to reckon with the aftermath. Dozens had died, hundreds had been scarred, and the city's social fabric was in tatters. The dance plague became a cautionary tale, whispered in taverns and retold in church sermons. It was a reminder of the thin line between order and chaos and how quickly life could be upended. But for many, the plague was not just a historical anomaly. It was a reflection of deeper truths. The event had exposed the underlying tensions of a society stretched to its limits, revealing the interplay of fear, faith, and human vulnerability. It was a phenomenon that demanded answers, even if those answers remained elusive. As the dust settled over Strasbourg, one question lingered. What lessons could be drawn from this harrowing ordeal, and could such an event happen again in the modern world? The legacy of the dance plague. When the last dancer fell, and the streets of Strasbourg returned to an eerie calm, the dance plague of 1518 left behind a legacy of unanswered questions and haunting memories. For those who witnessed the phenomenon, it was a harrowing experience that seemed almost otherworldly. But for future generations, the event became a lens through which to explore the complexities of human behavior, collective psychology, and cultural response to crisis. This strange and tragic episode didn't fade quietly into history. Instead, it sparked debates, inspired cautionary tales, and became a case study for understanding the human condition. A cautionary tale for the ages. In the immediate aftermath, the dance plague became a story passed down through generations, retold with a mix of awe and dread. Medieval chroniclers recorded the event in vivid detail, ensuring that it would not be forgotten. These accounts often attributed the plague to divine punishment, using it as a moral lesson to warn against sin and irreverence. Priests invoked the story during sermons, urging their congregations to maintain their faith and moral integrity lest they, too, incur the wrath of the heavens. For others, the dance plague was a reminder of the precarious balance between order and chaos. It underscored the fragility of human society and the ease with which collective fear could spiral out of control. Even as the years passed, the event remained a grim cautionary tale, serving as both a warning and a mystery, shaping the study of mass hysteria. As centuries passed and scientific inquiry began to challenge medieval superstition, scholars revisited the dance plague as a historical case study in mass hysteria. This phenomenon, also known as a mass psychogenic illness, occurs when groups of people under extreme psychological stress exhibit shared physical or emotional symptoms. The dance plague became one of the earliest documented examples of mass hysteria, laying the groundwork for future studies on how stress, fear, and social contagion can influence collective behavior. It revealed the profound impact of environmental and cultural pressures on the human mind, demonstrating how the body could respond in bizarre and even deadly ways to psychological distress. In the 20th century, researchers drew parallels between the dance plague and other historical episodes of mass hysteria, such as the Salem witch trials or the Tanganyika laughter epidemic of 1962. Each case highlighted the power of suggestion and the role of group dynamics in amplifying unusual behavior. The dance plague, however, remained one of the most dramatic and perplexing examples, standing as a testament to the mysteries of human psychology, lessons for cultural and social anthropology. The dance plague also became a focal point for anthropologists studying the intersection of culture, environment, and behavior. It was not enough to analyze the event as a psychological anomaly. Its roots were deeply entwined with the social and cultural context of 16th century Strasbourg. Anthropologists noted that the plague occurred during a period of extreme hardship. Famine, disease, and political instability had created a fertile ground for collective anxiety. The dance plague, they argued, was not just a bizarre outburst but a form of coping, an unconscious release of tension in a population pushed to its breaking point. The event also illuminated the role of cultural narratives in shaping behavior. The belief in St. Vitus' curse, for example, provided a framework for interpreting the dancing mania, influencing how people reacted to the phenomenon and even how they experienced it. In this sense, the dance plague was both a product of its time and a mirror reflecting the fears, beliefs, and struggles of its society. Influence on popular culture and media. The dance plague's strange and tragic story has fascinated audiences for centuries, inspiring countless works of fiction, art, and media. Writers and filmmakers have drawn upon the event's eerie imagery and enigmatic nature to craft narratives that blur the line between history and horror. In literature, the dance plague has been invoked as a metaphor for uncontrollable forces, whether societal, psychological, or supernatural, that disrupt the ordinary. In films and documentaries, the story's visual elements, the writhing bodies, the haunting music, the blood-stained streets, lend themselves to evocative storytelling. Even in modern times, the dance plague continues to captivate. Its blend of historical mystery and human drama appeals to audiences seeking both intellectual intrigue and emotional resonance. The event's enduring presence in popular culture ensures that its legacy remains alive, a testament to its power to intrigue and unsettle. Modern parallels and relevance. Perhaps the most significant legacy of the dance plague lies in its relevance to modern society. Although the event occurred over 500 years ago, its underlying dynamics, the interplay of stress, suggestion, and collective behavior, are not confined to the past. Mass hysteria continues to manifest in various forms, from panic buying during crises to sudden outbreaks of unexplained symptoms in schools or workplaces. Social media, with its ability to amplify fear and spread misinformation, has become a modern catalyst for collective anxiety. Events like the dance plague remind us of the human tendency to respond to uncertainty with behavior that can seem irrational or even dangerous. The dance plague also resonates in discussions about mental health and the impact of societal pressures. It underscores the importance of addressing the root causes of collective stress and creating environments that foster resilience rather than fear. In this sense, the event serves as both a historical case study and a call to action, urging us to learn from the past to navigate the challenges of the present. A legacy of questions and curiosity. Despite centuries of study, the dance plague remains an enigma. Was it the result of ergot, poisoning, mass hysteria, or a combination of factors? Could it have been something entirely unknown, a phenomenon we have yet to understand? The enduring mystery of the dance plague is perhaps its greatest legacy. It challenges us to confront the limits of our knowledge and to embrace curiosity in the face of the unexplained. It invites us to explore the intersection of history, science, and the human experience, reminding us that even the strangest events can hold valuable lessons. As we reflect on the dance plague of 1518, we are left with a sense of wonder, not just at the event itself, but at the resilience of the human spirit. In the face of chaos and uncertainty, the people of Strasbourg endured, leaving behind a story that continues to captivate and inspire. If history has shown us anything, it's that the unexpected can strike at any moment. Could the dynamics of the dance plague be a warning for how societies today might respond to crises? Could it happen again? Lessons for the modern world. The dance plague of 1518 remains one of history's most bizarre and unsettling episodes. But it's not just a relic of the past. Beneath the eerie images of uncontrollable dancers lies a set of dynamics that resonate deeply with modern life. Stress, social contagion, and the human psyche's response to crisis are timeless forces. As we examine the possibility of such phenomena happening again, the parallels between the past and present grow increasingly clear. Modern manifestations of collective behavior. The mechanisms that fueled the dance plague, extreme stress, group psychology, and cultural narratives are not confined to the medieval world. They surface repeatedly in modern contexts, albeit in different forms. One striking example is the phenomenon of mass psychogenic illness, often seen in schools, workplaces, or isolated communities. In such cases, a single individual's symptoms, whether fainting, trembling, or dizziness, can spread rapidly, creating an outbreak of shared physical experiences with no identifiable medical cause. These incidents, like the dance plague, are often triggered by stress and exacerbated by fear. Even more broadly, the advent of the internet and social media has created fertile ground for social contagion, viral trends, panic buying during crises, and even mass hysteria fueled by misinformation all echo the dynamics of the dance plague. The difference is that in today's hyper-connected world, such phenomena can spread faster and farther than ever before. Stress as a catalyst. At the heart of the dance plague was a society under immense pressure. Famine, disease, and uncertainty had pushed the people of Strasbourg to their breaking point, and the dancing mania became an outlet for their collective stress. In modern times, the sources of stress have shifted but remain equally potent. Global crises, such as pandemics, economic instability, and climate change, weigh heavily on the human psyche. On an individual level, rising rates of anxiety, depression, and burnout reflect a society grappling with the demands of modern life. Under such conditions, the mind and body can react in unexpected ways, just as they did in 1518. The dance plague serves as a stark reminder of the physical toll that stress can take. It underscores the importance of addressing the root causes of societal stress rather than dismissing its symptoms as mere anomalies. The role of social contagion. The dance plague was not just an individual affliction. It was a collective experience, fueled by the power of suggestion and imitation. This phenomenon, known as social contagion, is a well-documented force in human behavior. When people see others engaging in a particular action, they are more likely to do the same, especially in times of uncertainty. In the modern world, social contagion manifests in both positive and negative ways. Viral challenges, protests, and social movements can inspire collective action, while panic buying, conspiracy theories, and moral panics can spiral into chaos. The internet amplifies these dynamics, allowing ideas and behaviors to spread with unprecedented speed and reach. The dance plague offers a cautionary tale about the power of social contagion. It highlights the need for clear communication and responsible leadership in times of crisis to prevent harmful behaviors from escalating. Cultural and psychological frameworks. One of the most intriguing aspects of the dance plague was how cultural narratives shaped its course. The belief in St. Vitus' curse provided a framework for interpreting the phenomenon, influencing how people experienced and responded to it. Modern parallels can be seen in how cultural beliefs and media narratives shape our understanding of events. From health scares to viral trends, the stories we tell ourselves play a significant role in how we behave. Recognizing these frameworks can help us navigate collective challenges more effectively, fostering resilience rather than fear. The dance plague teaches us to question the narratives we accept and to seek a deeper understanding of the forces at play in our lives. The warning signs of history. The dance plague's legacy is not just one of fascination. It is also a warning. It reveals how easily stress and fear can disrupt societal order and how quickly unusual behaviors can spread in the right conditions. In today's world, these dynamics are more relevant than ever. The COVID-19 pandemic, for example, highlighted the fragility of modern society and the power of collective behavior. From panic buying to vaccine hesitancy, the crisis demonstrated how uncertainty and fear can lead to widespread, sometimes irrational, responses. By studying the dance plague, we gain valuable insights into the warning signs of mass hysteria and social contagion. It urges us to prioritize mental health, build strong social support systems, and remain vigilant against the spread of misinformation. Could it happen again? The question lingers. Could a phenomenon like the dance plague occur in the modern world? The answer is both sobering and complex. While the exact circumstances of the 1518 epidemic may never be replicated, the underlying forces, stress, social contagion, and cultural influence are alive and well. Modern society, with its rapid pace, constant connectivity, and global challenges, creates new opportunities for such phenomena to emerge. However, we also have tools that medieval Strasbourg lacked: advanced medical knowledge, widespread access to information, and the ability to address mental health on a societal scale. These tools offer hope that we can prevent or mitigate similar events in the future. The dance plague reminds us of the importance of understanding our shared humanity. It is a call to action to address the root causes of societal stress, to foster resilience, and to remain curious about the mysteries of the human experience. The dance plague of 1518 is a story that continues to resonate across centuries. It is a tale of mystery and madness, but also one of resilience and reflection. As we navigate the complexities of modern life, it serves as a reminder of how deeply connected we are to each other, to our history, and to the forces that shape our world. Could we face another dance plague? Perhaps not in the same form, but the conditions that sparked it remain a part of the human experience. By learning from the past, we can better understand the present and prepare for the challenges of the future. Conclusion: the dance plague may seem like a distant and strange event, but its lessons are as relevant today as they were in 1518. How will we respond the next time society faces the unexpected?